I was able to heal myself, anyone can find, complete health. It's just a matter of having the right tools, having the right people, having the courage to look deep down and find the truth, because it's all inside of us.
Welcome to Supernormalized, the podcast where we challenge the conventional, break boundaries, and normalize the seemingly supernatural. Join me, CJ, as we explore less uncharted realms of existence and unravel the mysteries of life experience. My treasured listeners, if you have a life story or healing modality or unique knowledge that you'd love to share, reach out to me at Supernormalized, that's Supernormalized with a Z, at proton.me. Let's together embrace acceptance of the supernatural and unusual as what it really is, completely normal. Today we have on Supernormalized Simon Luthi, who is an experienced energy medicine practitioner who embarked on a transformative journey after struggling with some severe autoimmune disease. Dissatisfied with Western medicine's approach, he delved into uncovering the root causes of his illness, and through successful treatment, dietary changes, and the elimination of heavy metals, he experienced significant improvement and eventually achieved complete healing. Along the way, he encountered Dr. Alberto Villoldo, who introduced him to a profound realm of energy medicine and quantum healing. This encounter sparked his deep dive into studying various indigenous healing practices, focusing on techniques to clear blockages and trauma from the aura and light body. In 2018, he became a certified Reiki master and had the opportunity to learn from knowledgeable individuals worldwide, honing his skills in ancient healing techniques, and a personal battle with cancer in 2020 led him to reflect on the meaning of his experience of his own mortality. This introspection fueled his passion for providing support as a certified end-of-life doula, accompanying people on their final journey. With his intuitive approach and clairvoyant gifts, he tailors each treatment to the individual, facilitating the release of built-up trauma, pain, illness, stress, and depression, leading to a gradual improvement and, in some cases, complete disappearance of these challenges. Welcome to Supernormalized, Simon Luthi.
Hi there, CJ.
Yeah, how are you?
Awesome.
How are you doing there?
Looking forward to this chat.
Yeah, so was I.
Great.
So was I. Once we made contact through that meeting service for interviews, I was very interested to know more about everything to do around your energy medicine practice and what happened to you and how you got there. So can you share for us your story on how you became an energy medicine practitioner? I mean, what led you to pursue that path? Obviously, it was something that happened to you yourself, because it must have been something that triggered quite intensely. What was your life before, and what happened, and then how did that make you fall into this path?
Yeah, excellent question. And thanks for asking. A really interesting story for me. I've seen an angel when I was 4 years old. And, in childlike curiosity, you would, of course, talk to adults. And what do adults know? We now know better since we're, adults here. And my parents just basically said, this doesn't exist. Like, there's no way you could have seen an angel. And I think I personally turned off my psychic abilities at that time. And then you go through life, you get married, you raise children, and perhaps it is midlife crisis. I don't know exactly how I would want to explain it, but I got sick in 2016. Sick meaning I was bedridden. I had a mystery illness. I couldn't get out of bed anymore, and was misdiagnosed by the Western system. And in the process of trying to get to the bottom of what was happening with me, I was introduced to Alberto Villoldo from the Four Winds. So he's kind of the neo shaman, and have participated in a in a workshop called Grow a New Body. There's a book out on that as well, which basically talks a bit on energy medicine, shamanism, good foods and nutrition and supplements to restore health in the body. And something happened that week. At the end of the week, we had a despacho ceremony, and I had my hand up. I still remember it. It's a castle ruin in Germany overlooking France and Switzerland. Had my hand up, and energy hit me in the palm of my hand. It's almost like a water hose. It was very subtle, and it startled me. And I thought, man, what is this? Couldn't make heads or tails out of it. And I've asked Alberto during that week, and he, in his infinite wisdom, said, "Well, you must develop it." And I didn't really know what to do, with it. But I was curious enough to go home and ask one of my good friends who I knew a little something about metaphysical things, and I felt comfortable sharing what had happened. And he suggested, well, maybe you should look into Reiki and becoming a Reiki master. And at the time, I was a corporate executive working in financial services. My marriage was falling apart, but I felt like something is happening with my body. I just, when you just cannot stop it, like it's almost like something is gripping you. Like, what happened here? But it took me probably a good year or so to really accept the fact that something was happening to me spiritually, physically. I was getting treatment in Germany, getting better physically. And then about, in 17, I just couldn't run from this energetic feeling that I've had. And then in really short fashion, started several mystery schools. I've been blessed enough to study with various indigenous healers from around the world, and have been becoming a shaman. And I think through that journey, and we'll talk a bit more in detail about it, I'm sure, my gifts came back. So I would say I'm clairvoyant. I see things, and I'm also claircognizant. So I know stuff that I can't really know. And then through all of that, my, I guess, metaphysical abilities, as I would call them, have started to really come to life. And so now I have my energy medicine practice. I still have a corporate interest, but more and more and more, the things that I do, I see people with physical issues or emotional issues, deal with a lot of the tough stuff, depression, anxiety, panic attacks, and the sorts, but have been equipped to really help and find the root cause of why other people are sick in the same place.
Yeah, that's quite a journey that you've been down there. So reaching back into your past, and you had that encounter with the angel, and obviously you were open enough for that to happen. It's quite the sad story that that your parents didn't really support you in that, because it was outside of their paradigm. And that's actually unfortunately the story for a lot of us children when we're children. I mean, that happened to me too, and all of my friends just pretty much passed me off as being crazy. But for me, that was my experience was actually a contact with fairy beings in the forest, and I thought that was normal. And when I talked about that to other people, they were like, "What?" For me, that was like normal. I'd go to the forest and sit with them, and they'd teach me how to meditate. But no one else, that doesn't have no other people, and some people are open to it, some people aren't. So over time, as you actually went into this experience and of energy healing and embraced it, you were really opening up again to all of the tools that you had from way back then. And did you find that actually reopening to all that also expanded your world in different ways?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There were times that I was working with someone that I did things intuitively, removing entities and or removing things from the physical body. And I stopped and I go, I don't know this. Where do I know this? But the knowledge of it coming back. Now, obviously, through a lot of different past life regressions, and also deep, diving deeper into my soul, I now understand that I have been doing this many, many lives. I've also been persecuted and murdered for what I've been doing. And I'm happy to live now in the 21st century where that's less prominent, where we can have a podcast like this and we can talk openly about all the things that are they're out there. But to go back to your question on the child, like, we now know that children really up until the age of 6 are actually quite in tune with the other side, where that veil is still, very, very thin. And I often wondered what would the world look like if we would encourage, kids growing up with the normality of like seeing things and seeing other beings, and what that would be for them as adults afterwards.
It would be an amazing world. And we talked before the show about Corby, and she's, into actually teaching kids how to do that too. So yeah, it's interesting that we've come to that point. Now, what were some of the root causes that you discovered for yourself about your severe autoimmune disease, and how did you address them at the time?
Yeah, I firmly believe that we can have wake up calls, right? So you could look at an illness like this as an opportunity, right? There's a crisis. I personally believe, or my perception is, that if stuff like that happens, it stops you in your tracks, right? Literally, I could no longer perform the daily duties. I couldn't dress myself. I couldn't put dishes away. I couldn't, I could hardly walk. It was really, really tough to get out of bed. So what do, right? So I think Western culture teaches us, oh, just pop a couple pills and off you go. And or, someone else might have what we call a midlife crisis of just feeling this unhappiness inside, and, go buy a Harley and move on, I guess. But when we really pay attention, I think these health crises, can really teach us something profound, so that we're not in congruence with our life purpose. And in my case, if you had told me 10 years ago that I would be doing, training as an end of life doula, that I would be doing all of this work with energy, I would have said you're crazy, right? That my reality at the time was so completely different. Yet at the same time, I know that I incarnated again in this body to actually, go through a few of these things, to be back and doing the work that I've been doing, before. So again, when I started to feel this energy, I could have very easily said, "Oh, this was odd. Okay, peculiar," and go back to what I was doing. But it gripped me long enough to go, "Wow, what was that?" Right? And you can't see it. Like, we will talk a little bit about, ghosts and or spirits and or all these things that you can't see. Well, some people see. I see other things, but that's not. I feel them, right? But majority of people, I would argue, don't see them. But does that not exist, right? It's the age-long question of, well, you can't see the air. We're still breathing it. We're living it. It's there, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's been posited by Terence McKenna a little while back that we live in an ecology of souls, and other people that have mentioned that basically we are living in a soup of souls that we just can't see, but they're around us all the time. I've had my own personal experience with this sort of thing as well, and the spirits are around us all the time. Whether you tune into them or not is up to your openness, I would say. That's another way to put it. And they can harm, they can heal, and some people even posit the idea that if you don't heal your ancestors' lineage, then the ones that you don't actually heal turn up as ghosts and start haunting you. So yeah, that it all seems actually quite in alignment with what you've been talking about there. Now, I was going to ask you, could you tell us more about your encounter with Dr. Albert Villaldo and how it influenced your understanding of energy medicine and quantum healing? What actually really drew you out on that? I mean, besides your experience with the energy in your hand, did it just hook into you in a different way that you couldn't explain?
Yeah, so I mean, he is, and what I think he calls himself, a neo shaman, right? So he studied or was in the Amazon, and actually he was working for, I think, San Francisco State University at the time for a grant to go figure out the longevity in the Amazon. And what he thought he was going to study was actually quite contrary to that. So he was introduced to an ancient wisdom of the shamans, the Quechua shamans of Peru, and started to study with them. So even for him, it was an initiation of sorts into this, energy medicine. Again, complete healing on the physical and the emotional and the intellectual and spiritual side of someone, including things such as time isn't linear, time is circular. So can we, travel backwards in time? to heal ourselves, to heal our ancestry line. But, through the same thing, can we travel in the future? Or our healing actually, is influencing things. And I thought it was really, really interesting. I think my first recollection that I've had after starting my initial training, that I started to heal my personal trauma and relationships and love. And as I was starting to get deeper into my shadow sides, deeper into my karmic, experiences, and I started to heal that out. That same day where I felt like the process was complete, I'm getting a text from my daughter expressing thankfulness about the love she feels for her dad and relationships. And about an hour later, my son is sending me a text, relationship related. And I thought peculiar. And I asked my daughter about it, and she goes, I don't know, but I just kind of felt called to, express that I love you. And so to me, this was it started to click for me. It's like, okay. So Alberto talks about the ability to, travel backwards, and he's talking about, 7 generations back, 7 generations forward, or perhaps it's even more so, right? It could be your entire ancestor line. But the fact that I actually worked on myself and then had an instant confirmation that my kids actually felt something was pretty mind blowing to me, and that really started to get me into, okay, there's got to be something here, not just theoretically in the books and the things that I've learned, but actually energetically that starts to shift.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen that with my wife. She does energy healing with people as well, and she's done a lot of ancestor line healing, and she finds that when women, for example, do a lot of healing around their connection, then and if they've been estranged with their family or their mother or somebody else, that often that taps into that line and signals to them, and then they feel open and connected enough to be able to come back to them. And so often within days of doing that healing, they'll be calling her and saying, you wouldn't believe what happened with my daughter, you wouldn't believe what happened with my mother, you wouldn't believe what happened with my friend. And all these things change because you've healed yourself and your line. Because a lot of that stuff that comes through us might not necessarily be from this lifetime as well. It can actually be something that's traumatic that's happened in the past that caused us to behave in a certain way, which has affected others. So once that scar is healed, then all good energy can start flowing again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would go a step further. There's an amazing gentleman in Germany. His name is Clemens Kubi, and he studied 30 years of the process of conscious dying and conscious incarnation. So think about the fact that if we didn't have to spend the first 40, 50 years rediscovering ourselves and rediscovering our gifts, like it was the cause in my side, if we could actually consciously die, take that knowledge with us, and then also incarnate again with all this knowledge, and from day one, start to do things, that would be, absolutely amazing. And so there is, obviously, he's talking about the Dalai Lama, that, when he knows that his physical body is leaving, that he can say, I'm going to incarnate here and come get me again, right? And bring all that knowledge with. And so I find this a fascinating topic, right? This conscious incarnation. And we could make them even more so out of our lives, right? So not having to wait for a midlife crisis, or in my case, a health crisis to come up, to get going with what we truly deep down feel like that's our soul purpose, right? What gets me out in the morning and brings me joy.
Yeah, I like that idea. It sort of short circuits the idea that I have around death being a place where once you've reconciled your last life and you're sitting in infinity, in the infinite light, and you have no consciousness because you're in absolute bliss. And then somebody puts a travel brochure in front of you and you read it and go, oh, that's cool. The next minute you're born. So, but you didn't read the whole brochure where it said you don't get to really enjoy your first 50 years. You've got to still process stuff. It's like, I should have read that brochure carefully.
You missed the fine print, right?
yeah. They were photoshopping those photos. Yeah, exactly. So what indigenous forms of healing have you studied in depth, and how have they shaped your approach to removing blockages and trauma from the aura and light body?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, initially it was really becoming a Reiki master. So many of you probably know Reiki as kind of probably the initial most mainstream form of energy healing, per se. So I very quickly, done Reiki 1, Reiki 2, Reiki 3, Reiki Master, but that was obviously with an American teacher, was, pretty close to the lineage of Uzui, the creator of it. But then really where things started to take off is when I started with studying with the Four Winds and the faculty of the Four Winds, and being introduced to the techniques of the Kero shamans of the Andes. And maybe what I should say, because there's always a little bit of and I know you have that topic in Australia as well, right? In terms of is white men, and I really mean this, starting to steal knowledge,
Yeah,
from the
appropriation.
indigenous cultures. And what's in right. And so what's interesting is there's stories around the world, and one definitely that I'm, fascinated by. When the Spanish came to South America and, saw that there was these medicine men, medicine women out there, they tried to kill them all. And so they fled into the Andes, into the mountains, and were told to stay there, that a sign would be coming when it was time to come back down from the mountain. And in the 1960s, that sign came and said, okay, you need to now come down and teach this knowledge to the white people. So there was actually a conscious effort to bring that knowledge back, into harmony with Pachamama, and teaching us the new ways. And there's several other cultures that are actually reporting the same thing, like New Zealand with the Maori culture. There's similar stories out there as well. So how do you explain that, from continents apart, this message of it's time now to, to spread this message, comes down. So I thought that was fascinating. And in that training, so I just thought a bit of context as to like, why am I, initiated there, and why have I chosen to go that route? So my brother is a shaman as well, and he was the one that initially kind of nudged me a little bit and said, "Hey, like you should check this out." And then it was, I would say, serendipity at its best, that I was always meeting other healers from around the world. I've been initiated by an absolute beautiful Yupik Eskimo elder. She was part of the 13 indigenous grandmothers, Rita Biko Blumenstein. She passed away now as well. She was probably the first person that truly saw me, and have been able to study with her for a short period of time. And so there's a couple others that, came alongside to teach me techniques. And I would say I had to give myself permission to become a universal healer. There's some tribes that will say, don't mix and match, do this and don't do the other. And for me, I just always felt like this is all intention. There's all energy. It's all flowing. There's different techniques that I'm learning here. But and at the end of the day, if someone that comes into my practice truly wants to heal and wants to learn the lesson of why things show up in the first place, personally, again, that's Simone talking here. I feel like I should not be judging, or I should, it should be spirit led, I guess is what I'm saying. And if spirit is telling me that, use this here or add this to it, then it should be possible. But it took me a while to allow myself to just see myself more as a universal healer than, a shaman, or then a Reiki master, or an energy healer per se. And that's been, a little bit of my story. Funny side of it, or side story to that is, my brother called me the rocket shaman, because if you think about it, I started my journey in 16, not being coming out of bed, and now, having a good go in practice and helping people from around the world. And I thought it was kind of a funny title. So for those of you that are, curious, my Instagram handle is the Rocket Shaman. So, come and connect. And
Excellent. That's a good handle. Yeah, it's interesting having that experience of that you've described there, of sort of like, I think they call it like an imposter syndrome, where we feel like we can't do something because we don't want to be imposing upon other cultures. And I understand that, and appropriation is a colonial sort of thing, and obviously not so good. However, I also recognize that spirit does elect people to do work, and if you're there doing service to others, then it doesn't sort of matter what work you're doing, as long as you're doing it to help others. And we pick up pieces of information from all over the world and all different methods and all different means and all different ways. And some of these ways even come through directly from spirit itself. And, it has no other grounding. So, that you can't appropriate from spirit. It's just coming through. You have to do it. Yeah. I find
absolutely.
that.
And, yeah, and luckily there's amazing people like you talked a bit like about Corby Midlight, who a good friend of mine who was on your show a couple of days ago. If it hadn't been for people like Corby and others, when you are going through this crisis and you go, I feel deep down something is shifting, something is changing. I don't know why. At least in my case, I needed help. It was like, why is it that I'm feeling this way? And maybe this is our innate, quest for answers. Why, that we like us little children, we say like, why dad, why mom? But I'm eternally grateful for a lot of people that have supported me through this journey, that were willing to be on the quest with me and turn on the flashlight and shine in the corners of my soul and said, oh, I hear something, look at this. And, maybe, and so, I guess I'm saying this as an encouragement for those of you that are listening, that if you are going through, a crisis like this, that there is always, always, always kind of a silver lining, and it's just a question of, do you have support to look into it?
Yeah. I've spoken to a lot of people on this podcast already that have been through similar experiences that you have been through and I've been through as well. In that, it's like we go through like a shamanic death of sorts by going through a healing crisis, and that healing crisis does trigger us towards learning more things about ourselves and our worlds, and changing our complete cosmology towards basically a more universal view. And that sounds like exactly what's happened to you as well. So as a part of that, I wanted to ask, you mentioned that you dealt with cancer in about 2020, and how did this experience shape your perspective on life and lead you to become a certified end-of-life doula? And explain to us what an end-of-life doula is as well, if you could.
Yeah, awesome. We're totally in sync. I was hoping you would ask me that question next. So if you think about it, it's crazy, right? So 2016, I have an autoimmune, and trying to navigate through all of this and starting my energy healer practice. And then 2020, which for many people was a difficult year, for the pandemic and all these things. So absolutely correct. In June, I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I had a moment where I said, Spirit, really? Really? Like, what else you got? Like, but again, when you really look at it, why is this happening for me, not to me? And you have help from some amazing healers and or mediums, and or you are in tune yourself in terms of like, maybe you can figure this out. For me, I just, had to go seek help. It was amazing that I had to face my own mortality. So you get so I was 50 years old at the time, and it was like, okay, is this it? Like, has all the things that I've done really, is this it now? Like, am I leaving? And there are people such as Clemens that I mentioned. They're like, oh, if your body shuts down, like, it's okay. Go away and come back, and you can start over again. But for me, it was like, no. This is not anything that I feel like I wanted to go through. So I did both integrative and naturopathic treatment. My kids forced me to also undergo chemo, so I had 4 chemo treatments, and I went back to get all the poison and all that stuff out of my system. So I don't really know what healed me at the, but it was part of, okay, let's just throw the kitchen sink at it. But the real interesting thing to me is when I reflect back, the power of words, the power of positive intentions, the power of positive affirmations. And why I'm sharing this is my mom would say, oh, we have colon cancer in the family, and, go get your colonoscopy and all these things. And I remember that I would always say, cancer is not in my future. Cancer is not my future. Well, inadvertently, you give that word C power by mentioning it. And, if you probably better thing would have said, I live a long and healthy life. Same desired outcome, but different words to it. And so I may trigger some folks here, and just, I'm going to talk a little bit about suicide. But I think it's important part of my story, when I was working with Corby, we really went deep into then the karmic lessons that I was here to do. Another friend of mine and healer friend said, "Man, if you incarnate, you just pick the craziest lives." And it's true. Like an hour probably is not enough to go through all the things that I've been experiencing. But the interesting thing is, one of my karmic lessons in this lifetime is to die of a natural death. And realizing that I had committed suicide in previous lives and or accidental suicide. And so this was another crossroads of this. Okay, well, you've got cancer and you could go out and be done and basically miss a karmic lesson. And from the moment that I started to really say, again, I live a long and healthy life. I'm healthy. I live a long and healthy life, and repeated that positive affirmations for, I don't know, 30, 60 times a day for 30 days. All of the sensations in my throat is where I had it went away. And I have been healthy ever since. Again, I want to encourage people that are listening and that are maybe going through health crisis, that there are definitely there's power in positive affirmations and just kind of tuning in. And then you asked me about the death doula work. Because of my own mortality, I wanted to know more. For me, it was one of those like, okay, so if I died now, like, how would I die? Would I quietly slip away in a hospital room somewhere? Would I want to be by myself at home? Would I want my kids to be here? What if I lose my ability to go to the bathroom? And like, what, like all these things about what will people think? And will it be a burden for people? And the real interesting thing to me, I don't know whether this is happening to you as well. You realize that there are guideposts that have come through your life. And I remember that my parents, when I was 7 years old, even though they didn't believe in angels, they kind of believed in the afterlife, in paradise or heaven or whatever we're going to call it. And there's a Swiss psychologist, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who was instrumental in the 60s to talk about death and dying, and that there's a natural process of all of that. And which parents let their 7-year-old watch TV shows about interviews about death and dying. But I always felt like there was more to it. So I've then recently just become certified as an end-of-life doula. And basically what it is, it's a conduit between hospice, between medical staff and the family. And it's helping to go through the process of, could be, life review, eulogies, biography, basic needs, make someone comfortable, come up with practical tips on what's happening, but even educating the family of, here are the different stages that are happening in kind of the diagnostics of, okay, well, you're terminally ill, you have cancer or whatnot, and then what happens afterwards. And what I find really, really, really interesting is, because I'm now also overlaying my shamanic practices with just the practical things that a death doula does, I believe that it is possible to alleviate a lot of the sludge that people are taking with them into the afterlife, meaning, oh, I should have done this. Oh, I should have, apologized to this person. Oh, I stole money from so-and-so, or, the regrets of like, oh, I never got to do X, Y, Z. People physically hold on to the rails of their bed when it's time to go, because they don't want to go yet. And the beautiful shamanic practice is to really clear that sludge out. So I believe that through the energy medicine, we get to help someone die more peacefully. And then if we believe that there is a life review afterwards of like all the things that I decided I was going to do in this lifetime, what have I done? There's no, the church is wanting you to believe that there's like some kind of heaven and hell. Like, no, we are the accuser and the judge and the jury all in one to go through it. But I do believe that by applying some of these shamanic practices, that I can help someone go through that life review faster so that they can come back and incarnate again.
Mm. Mm. Okay, so it's very intense work by the sound of it. And can you explain how you work intuitively and and personalized treatments for each individual? And what kind of results have you seen in terms of releasing trauma, pain, illness, stress, and depression, and even helping people with their end of life experiences?
Yeah, I am blessed in that sense that, as I said, I'm clairvoyant, so I see things. I see certain energies on the body. I see imbalances that are happening that can be removed, and we're getting a little bit into the supernaturalized part of it, right? So, how does illness show up? Can you see it? Can you not see it? Or can you see traumatic imprints from someone's life in their aura? This is one of my gifts. I can see it, and I can, then remove it. And the other part is I'm claircognizant. So as I'm starting to work with someone, if I'm in someone's aura with my hands, it's almost like I'm tuning into what's happening. So trying to think of an example that with privacy and all these things. So I'll just try to make this or explain this as best as possible. But there are situations when you feel into a traumatic experience and you will say, this feels like to me that this energy that I'm picking up is, let's just say, a car accident. I see a smaller child, 4 or 5-year-old, and I see a car accident, and I feel like one of the parents is screaming, dying, or maybe not dying, but like something happened there. Can you tell me more about it? And this particular person, is having gallbladder issues, is having digestive issues.
Oh.
And so it's a tough one sometimes to not re-traumatize someone, right? So to start to talk about trauma. But I believe that spirit shows me, these traumatic events as a way to heal it out, to talk about it. Sometimes it can be very emotional, and tears are flowing, and it's kind of this relived experience. But you have to kind of picture that, people are fully closed on my table. We're playing beautiful, relaxing music. The trauma is coming up, but I'm able to then really go into the body and grab that traumatic imprint that is left. And as the person is, talking through what had happened and how they felt and how they started to remember, that all can kind of be removed and, thrown into the fire or into salt water or whatever it may be. And so I have, hundreds of examples of this where, I can use my clairs and my gifts to then go, okay, what is needed? How can I be of best service to this person on my table? To restore the health again. And so in this particular case, really let the gallbladder, empty out, like all the yuck and all the, the stuff that was never digested. Get it out now out of the physical body, so it does not manifest in any further kind of physical, tumors and or things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. So the traumatic event itself, it may not have been even in this life, but it could have been in a past life, has actually imprinted upon the body in such a way as to cause issues in this timeline.
Yeah, absolutely. Migraines is another classical thing. Why does someone have migraines, and how can you actually alleviate those?
Yeah.
And I've seen things healing like instantly. I've seen people that have to come a couple times, and then the most peculiar one are the ones that it doesn't work. And where is it my ego that I feel like, okay, I should be able to, or is it not time yet for this person to heal? But they're here, right? So they came because they're trying to have help. And on my website, simonluti.com, I talk a little bit about, starting to combine modern technology with ancient wisdom. And I've created this process called applied neurocellular therapy. And what I mean by that is I have used now a hypnagogic lamp to induce a trance-like state that allows the person to sever the neurological pathways from the cell structure long enough so that I can go deeper into the body to actually remove imprints of pain than if they're just, not induced. And rather than, using mushroom, psilocybin, and or any other, it's a completely drug-free environment, but having a similar effect than if you were to go through a trip.
Okay, so it sounds like an entrainment device. Like maybe, I mean, I had one in the past called an Accelerator 2, and it was like a light eye mask that flashed binaural beats in light patterns, but also at the same time transmitted binaural beats in my headphones. And you put that on and you have the wildest experiences without anything at all. And because it actually does take you down in different frequencies. And when your brain, well, we'll call it your brain because I don't think it is, but when part of your body goes into that frequency resonance because of the binaural beats, it opens up. And I think we actually get detuned into something else. I've had a bit of a theory for a while now that our bodies are actually just an antenna and it looks like a human. But it seems like that you could be verifying that again with the work that you're doing with these light therapies that actually open people up so you can actually help release their trauma.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, and it's very similar to that, with the exception that you're not going through an auditory device. So it is literally just LED and stroboscope, but it activates the pineal gland. And then it's almost like an IMAX theater of color. So your brain will produce these alpha, beta, theta, and delta waves. And so I would say it's almost an LSD trip without taking LSD, which is the coolest thing. So I do it for me for meditative purposes in the morning. But using it in a practice setting has really start to break into that third category of clients that I'm seeing as to like, why is it not working, right?
Yeah. I regret selling my machine, I can tell you. I had it many years ago, and also had a Patrick Flanagan Neurophone version 1, and I used to hook that up to it, and that actually transmitted directly through your neurons into your brain, so it's even more like whoa. But yeah, I sold those machines way back when
yeah,
I thought,
we should probably do a show on just all these. We should probably do a show on just all these devices. I mean, well, there's stuff that's been around in the 20s and 30s, right? That just all of a sudden, I don't know. I don't want to be a government conspiracist here, but where had all this stuff gone, right? It's not anything new.
Yeah, are you talking like about the Blu-ray machines and sorry, violet ray machines and things like that? And also the work of Wilhelm Reich. Yeah.
There you go. That's I think he was way ahead of his time. And
totally
even
agree.
people that traveled to Atlantis and say we had electricity and all these things way there, and then what happened to it, So I think we have way more access to as I said, in my case, the healing frequencies and the stuff that I do. I think it's just the tip of the iceberg of rediscovering our gifts, rediscovering our innate abilities, and I'm excited for what's in store if we really start to
open up to it all. Yeah, for sure.
Accelerate ours.
Yeah. Okay, so can you share any specific success stories of examples of individuals who've experienced significant improvement or complete disappearance of their challenges through your treatments? I mean, obviously without identifying anybody.
Yeah, I've had several individuals. One, for instance, that comes to mind, had chronic nerve pain, always in pain, didn't really know where it was coming from. And that individual was just absolutely open to the possibilities that things could go and completely go away. That patient actually was completely pain-free, and it's almost now freaked out about when is it going to come back. All right. So we come back into this mindset of, last thing I heard is, completely healed. It never came back. I have stories of people with migraines. I'll bring this up again. It's a fairly simple way to remove, again, if someone is open to it. And it goes on and on and on. I mean, it's whether it's physical symptoms or then also ancestral healing where emotional traumas are being done. And perhaps the one thing that I should mention, as you were asking me, kind of the one that is the most peculiar one. I don't know why I'm the one that's getting all these cases, but maybe it's helpful to your listeners too. There's this phenomenon of this energetic entity form. One of my teachers discovered it. We will call it the M energy, because I don't want to give it. And if you're interested, I can email you the book link as well if people are interested of what it actually is. But let's just say matrix type an entity form plugs into you and starts to, as an almost an energy vampire, starts to suck energy out of you. And I see people that are either depression, panic attacks, brain fog, can't get out of bed in the morning, cannot function, don't remember things, and almost like depressed, right? I see this time and time and time again, and I don't know what it is. Is an ascension theory right now that's happening? Is it because something is, happening? And I know this intimately because this thing, I call it thing, was after me with a vengeance when I was, starting to get into my abilities. And I was like, I'm not that, important person. Why is this coming after me with such a vengeance? Now, of course, because, I now know I have been given these abilities, it makes a bit more sense. But what's happening with a person that is in that, state, they don't know. Something is just their environment, their family will say something is wrong with this person. And so there is a specific extraction technique that I've learned that I apply with these folks, where you actually extract that energetic form of their chakra system. And it's almost like, boom, like once it's gone, they kind of wake up and go, wait, what just happened here? And my favorite example is actually someone that I've worked on. And this is one of those where it's gone and then it can stay off. Sometimes it comes back. It depends a little bit of is this person in congruence or not congruence with their life. But let's just say it's one of those where, it had to, like going to the chiropractor, you have to come see an energy healer. Probably the second or the third visit that she came out of my practice room or my treatment room. And she goes, and I'm back. Like she knew. And this is a person that wouldn't get out of bed in the morning, had social aspects of her life that weren't, friendships that weren't working, relationships that weren't working, food stuff and all these things. And when that energetic life form is removed from someone's body, like in her case, she gets up at 7 in the morning and goes walking with the dog, which she wouldn't do before, right? She's able to interact. She's able to go to work and all these things. And unfortunately, I see this particular thing, let's call it, it's rampant right now in our society. And again, Western medicine, what do? You just put somebody on antidepressants. But I do truly believe that if someone is open to that, hey, there are things that can help. I see. This is probably the one thing I do the most these days is mental health. Folks, as I said, with depression, anxiety, panic attacks, brain fog, and it's a bit like Ghostbusters, I guess, which you'd call it.
Oh, look, I believe in these things because I've experienced them myself. I didn't believe that. I mean, I see this as a form of possession, and these entities, we were talking before and I was saying how we're actually surrounded by spirits. Not all of them are nice, and some of them want to take advantage of us, and they look for avenues and ways and methods to get into us so then they can actually get a hook in and have a life experience as being a human, because it's a coveted experience is living this life. And we're lucky to actually have it. And unfortunately, if we have our defenses down or we're not aware of these things, they can actually just hook in and start drinking, like you say, and enjoying the benefits of a life experience. Now, when they're on you and they're in you and they're actually a part of you, sometimes it can be so subtle that even your own thoughts that you think are yours are not yours. That's what I've found. And when I had one removed off me, I was like, wait a minute, all of that wasn't me at all. I had no idea how much of it wasn't me. I actually thought that was me. So when I had that pulled out of my system, my life changed dramatically at that point as well. So I completely understand what's happened for some of your the people you've worked with, and I've seen that actually happen with other people that my wife works with, because she does that work as well. And so yeah, it's quite amazing that these spirits are are out there doing this sort of work, and taking advantage of people. But becoming aware of it is actually one of the first key points, because you don't believe it. If you don't believe it, you just live in it, and you wonder why your life's like that. So yeah, it's quite a
Yeah,
challenge.
absolutely, absolutely. And I'll go a step further, and I teach classes on this by now, on these dimensional holes, I guess, that can also where beings come in, right? So the question is, where do you pick them up? Is it at airports? Is it in restaurants? Is it at your house itself? And it's really interesting. I'm not sure whether this is a topic you've talked about before, but these dimensional holes are basically weaknesses in the Hartmann grid and the Curry net. So these electromagnetic, grid that goes around planet Earth. And if you have an intersection of those grids, that has a weakness, these portals can come in. And I believe maybe this is where the church sort of thought about, damnation and the lower world and the upper world and all that stuff. But if you're unlucky enough that your house is sitting on top of one of those, dimensional holes, all these nasties, I will call them, can come in
Exactly.
at will. So there's these elevators that come in, and they come in and say, "Oh, I kind of like it here. I'm going to sit on this couch for for a bit."
Yes.
And and you will see crazy things such as things will burn, or you have people that don't sleep, or
Yep.
illnesses. I even seen animals that were severely impacted by energetic entities as well. And so when you really start to restore also peace and balance in a house like this, it's amazing.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, look, I lived in a house that actually had a line going through it, and I didn't know that. And I put my bed on that line. I didn't know. And I started getting paralyzed down one side of my body, and I couldn't figure it out. And I was like literally feeling ultra tired, exhausted all the time. I went into work and I was complaining about it to my other workers. And one of my guys pulled me aside and he said, have you thought you could be laying on a dragon line? I said, what's a dragon line? And I went and looked it up, and he said it's an energy line that run across the planet, and they actually have cross points, and that's where lots of spirits manifest. And I was like, what? How do you know about this? Because back then I was very materialist. And I went home and I thought, okay, I'm going to work this out. I know about dowsing a little bit, so I'm going to make some dowsing rods. I made some dowsing rods with curtain hangers, and I walked around the outside of the building and found the exact line and marked it. And I went up to my window of my bedroom, and exactly where that energy line went through my bedroom, right at that window, the tree was dead there, full of spiders. I'm like, what? This is so obvious when you can see it, right? And so I moved my
Yeah,
bed, and I got better in 3 days. So, these things are obvious when they're obvious. Now, obviously, with that sort of thing, you must be doing some removal of spirits and entities from homes and buildings as well. I mean, you're aware of that. So what do you do when it comes to removal of entities from those sort of situations?
yeah, it's a whole protocol that I've also learned, and the beauty of that is that I can do this remote. In the
Yes.
most cases, I will say, most cases
Yes.
I can do it remote. It really starts by identifying where this dimensional hole is. So maybe we should differentiate between dimensional holes and portals, because it's not the same.
Right.
So portal can also, good things can come in, and so you don't necessarily want to close that out. So holes really is, like, in the best sense of terms, a hole in the ground where beings can come in and out. And really the first course of action is determining, is one there, and then where is it, right? Is it in the garden? Is it in the basement? Is it in the kitchen? Is it, like in your case, in the bedroom? And it's about closing the hole itself and sealing it, and making sure that nothing can come in. And I've seen things as big as 15 to 18 meters, and as
Wow.
small as 30 centimeters as well. So it's also kind of figuring out how big that can be. But again, the sealing of it, closing of it, the sealing of it is the first course of action. And then the second course that I do is I then look at what are all the different beings that made themselves at home. So you have to really address them with their own description, and send them out as well. So there's some that react to a bit more sending them with love and light into, the upper world, and there's others where you really have to command to go and go away. So in the process of removing these entities, it is, kind of important that we, take command, I guess. But I also would say, without proper training, don't try this at home. There's also some pretty nasty beings out there lately that I have seen that you just need to know what you're doing. But just know that there's people like me, there's other practitioners out there that can help, and you will know, right, if something is just like, if your house just doesn't feel peaceful. Your house should be a refuge. It should be light. It should be beautiful. It should be like a battery you plug in where you can be rested, right, and live your best life. But if your house doesn't feel good, there's always arguments. I had a case of someone that called me of a baby. I think he was 3 or 6 months old, and would always scream bloody murder. Didn't want to go to bed at night. And same thing in the nursery. There was an entity sitting, and then when it was removed, that little boy slept soundly afterwards. So it's an interesting topic. And again, if you asked me 2016, like what I will be doing in 2020, 2021, I would have said,
Yeah.
No way, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Life changes can be pretty huge. I actually think one of the pathways that these entities hook into is through traumatic events as well. It's like they're waiting around, waiting for you to be open through something extreme that's happened to you. So, if you've had a traumatic event, that may be something you want to look at as well, if there's any hooks in you, because, sometimes it needs to be cleared as well, as far as I can see.
Absolutely. I just had a case like that yesterday through, a traumatic event where a soul attached itself to it. And certainly can happen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I see that you're also a CEO of a startup, and as well as a private practitioner. How do you balance all of that?
That's a great question. I think that the main question for me was, like I mentioned, I was an executive in corporate in financial services and in the corporate world. Excuse me, when I'm looking over here, I have a visitor outside that is apparently looking to distract me from what's happening. So sorry.
Okay. That's all right.
And once I got sick twice, the question I really asked myself, why is this happening, right? And so where am I not in congruence? And I really did realize that the job that I was doing, I was quite good at, but it wasn't anything that filled my soul. So don't know about Australia or, the rest of the world, but here in the US, the Western health and wellness system is just broken. Especially post-pandemic, we don't have enough health workers, and we're just still treating a lot of illnesses just with medication. So don't get me wrong, Western medicine has its place. If you have a broken leg or a cut or something like this, and we made many advances. But unfortunately, I see quite a few people with these mystery illnesses, right? So you have symptoms that nobody really knows what's going on. They try to treat it, or it could be so expensive that you just can't afford, to be treated in the first place. And it really got me thinking, that we need to start to redefine and rethink how we go about healthcare and health and wellness. So yes, I just in the early stages of a startup that is going to address that particular problem of proper diagnosis, look at more of an integrative way to treat illnesses as they come up, and provide practical tools for people to live happy or get healthy as they are ill. And how to combine it when you love what you do. What is the $1 million question or statement is always like, when you love what you do, like you don't work a day in your life. And that's a bit of like where I'm at. I'm feeling very energized. I feel that I have something that I want to contribute to the collective. As I said, we just finished a bunch of validation interviews with heads of HR and heads of benefits, and really feel like I should say a team of two, my son and I, are onto something here, and I'm excited to really start to influence the way we think about healthcare. We will start in the US. because all of us that have a job get our healthcare through our employer. It's a little different in other countries, around the world. We'll see where this goes. But I'm just passionate about, again, overall health and wellness, in the physical and emotional forms. And I want to do my part to help. One of the questions probably people might ask, how do you get the strength when you are down, when you can't get out of it? Like, how do you get the strength to navigate? Like, how come you don't give up? And I think for me, when I think back, it's really about, why is this showing up in the first place for me? What is it that it's going to show me? And where am I not really truly living my purpose? And it's starting to feel inside of you, like, what brings me joy? What are my basic needs? Am I really feeling this or not feeling this? But I would encourage everyone that's listening, again, if I was able to heal myself, anyone can find complete health. It's just a matter of having the right tools, having the right people, and having the courage to look deep down and find the truth, because it's all inside of us.
Brilliant. What a beautiful message. And that one's deep and meaningful for everyone, I'm sure. And I want to thank you, Simon, for your sharing today, and your understanding and your wisdom and all your experiences that you've shared. So yeah, it's very appreciated. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, EJ, for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, mine too. All right, bye for now. What a treasure of experiences that our friend Simon has been through. He's experienced a lot of things there, and crossing over from what seems like a materialist understanding of the world into a deep and meaningful connection to spirit, as he went that way, and then enjoying the benefits of that himself in his healing, and then healing others. It brings a different perspective to the world, and I'm certain that many people would have enjoyed this show as much as I have. So if you've enjoyed today's show, please jump onto your favorite podcast app and give us a 5-star rating, and please write up something nice and positive so other people can find the show as well. And I really appreciate your time listening. And until next week, bye for now.